John Bonham.
John Henry Bonham was an English musician and songwriter, best known as the drummer of Led Zeppelin. Bonham was esteemed for his speed, power, fast right foot, distinctive sound, and feel for the groove. He is widely considered to be one of the greatest drummers in the history of rock music. Rolling Stone readers named him the best drummer of all time in 2011.
Biography. Early years.
Bonham was born on May 31, 1948, in Redditch, Worcestershire, England, to Joan and Jack Bonham. He began learning to play drums at the age of 5, making a drum kit out of containers and coffee tins, imitating his idols Max Roach, Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. His mother gave him a snare drum at the age of 10. He received his first proper drum kit from his father at 15, a Premier percussion set. Bonham never took any formal drum lessons, though as a teen he would get advice from other Redditch drummers. Between 1962 and 1963, while still at school, Bonham joined the Blue Star Trio, and Jerry Levin and the Avengers. Bonham attended Lodge Farm Secondary Modern School, where his headmaster once wrote in his school report card that he will either end up a dustman or a millionaire. After leaving school in 1964, he worked for his father as an apprentice carpenter in between drumming for different local bands. In 1964, Bonham joined his first semi-professional band, Terry Webb and the Spiders, and met his future wife Pat Phillips around the same time. He also played in other Birmingham bands such as the Nicky James Movement and the Senators, who released a moderately successful single She's a Mod, in 1964. Bonham then took up drumming full-time. 2 years later, he joined A Way of Life, but the band soon became inactive. Desperate for a regular income, he joined a blues group called Crawling King Snakes, whose lead singer was a young Robert Plant. In 1967, A Way of Life asked Bonham to return to the group, and he agreed, though throughout this period, Plant kept in contact with Bonham. When Plant decided to form Band of Joy, Bonham was first choice as drummer. The band recorded a number of demos but no album. In 1968, American singer Tim Rose toured Britain and invited Band of Joy to open his concerts. When Rose returned for another tour months later, Bonham was formally invited by the singer to drum for his band, which gave him a regular income.
Led Zeppelin.
After the breakup of the Yardbirds, guitarist Jimmy Page was forming a new band when he recruited Robert Plant, who in turn suggested Bonham. Page's choices for drummer included Procol Harum's B.J. Wilson, and session drummers Clem Catini and Ainsley Dunbar. Ginger Baker was also rumored to be on Page's list. However, upon seeing Bonham drum for Tim Rose at a club in Hampstead, North London, in July 1968, Page and manager Peter Grant were instantly convinced that he was the perfect fit for the new project, first known as the New Yardbirds and later as Led Zeppelin. Despite an intensive campaign to snare the drummer, Bonham was initially reluctant to join the band. Plant sent 8 telegrams to Bonham's pub, The Three Men in a Boat, in Walsall, which were followed by 40 telegrams from Grant. However, at the same time he was also receiving lucrative offers from established artists Joe Cocker and Chris Farlow. Eventually, Bonham accepted Grant's offer. He later recalled, "I decided I liked their music better than Cocker's or Farlow's." During Led Zeppelin's first tour of the United States in December 1968, Bonham became friends with Vanilla Fudge's drummer Carmine Appice. Appice introduced him to Ludwig drums, which he then used for the rest of his career. Bonham used the longest and heaviest sticks available, which he referred to as trees. His hard-hitting style was displayed to great effect on many Led Zeppelin songs, including Immigrant Song, Led Zeppelin III, When the Levee Breaks, Led Zeppelin IV/ Kashmir, Physical Graffiti, The Ocean, Houses of the Holy, and Achilles' Last Stand, Presence. In fact, Page once admitted to letting Bonham use a double bass drum in an early demo of Communication Breakdown, but claimed he scratched the track because of Bonham's overuse of it. The studio recording of Misty Mountain Hop perfectly captures his keen sense of dynamics, and this is similarly exhibited by his precise drumming on No Quarter. On several cuts from later albums, Bonham rather adeptly handled funk and Latin-influenced drumming. Songs like Royal Orleans and Fool in the Rain are good examples, respectively displaying great skill with a New Orleans shuffle and a samba rhythm. His famous drum solo, first entitled Pat's Delight, later renamed Moby Dick, would often last for 30 minutes and regularly featured his use of bare hands to achieve different sound effects. Bonham's action sequence for the film, The Song Remains the Same, featured him in a drag race at Santa Pod Raceway to the sound of his signature drum solo, Moby Dick. In Led Zeppelin concert tours after 1969, Bonham would expand his basic kit to include congas, orchestral timpani, and a symphonic gong. Bonham is also credited, by the Dallas Times-Herald, with the first in-concert use of electronic timpani drum synthesizers, most likely made by Syndrome, during a performance of the song Kashmir in Dallas, Texas in 1977. Many modern rappers would later heavily sample his drumming and incorporate it into their compositions, such as Beastie Boys, who sampled Moby Dick, The Ocean, and When the Levee Breaks. During his time with Led Zeppelin, Bonham was also an avid collector of antique sports cars and motorcycles, which he kept on his family's farm called the Old Hyde. He bought the Plough pub in the nearby village of Shenstone, which shows signs of conversion work to allow him to drive his bikes or cars right behind the bar. This was not the pub featured in the film The Song Remains the Same. It was the New Inn, which is currently boarded up, the only clue to its famous past being a picture hanging close to the bar.
Work outside Led Zeppelin.
As well as recording with Led Zeppelin, Bonham also found time to play on sessions for other artists. In 1969 Bonham appeared on the Family Dog's A Way of Life, with Page and Jones. Bonham also sessioned for Screaming Lord Sutch on his album Lord Sutch and Heavy Friends in 1970. He played drums on Lulu's 1971 song Everybody Clap, written by Maurice Gibb and Billy Lowry. In 1972 he played drums on a Maurice Gibb-produced album by Jimmy Stevens called Don't Freak Me Out in the UK and paid my dues in the US, credited as Gemini, given his star sign. Later in his career, Bonham drummed for his Birmingham friend, Roy Wood, on his 1979 album, On the Road Again, and on Wings' album Back to the Egg on the tracks Rockestra Theme, and So Glad to See You Here. Bonham was the best man of Black Sabbath's Tony Iommi at his wedding ceremony. In 1974, Bonham appeared in the film Son of Dracula, playing drums in Countdown's Harry Nilsson backing band. This was an Apple film directed by Freddie Francis. Bonham appeared in an overcrowded drum lineup including Keith Moon and Ringo Starr on the soundtrack album.
Death.
On September 24, 1980, Bonham was picked up by Led Zeppelin assistant Rex King to attend rehearsals at Bray Studios for an upcoming tour of the United States, the band's first since 1977. During the journey, Bonham asked to stop for breakfast, where he drank 4 quadruple vodkas, 16 shots, between 400 to 560 milliliters. He then continued to drink heavily after arriving at the rehearsals. They stopped rehearsing late in the evening and the band retired to Page's house, the Old Mill House in Clewer, Windsor. After midnight on September 25, Bonham fell asleep. Someone took him to bed and placed him on his side. Benji Lefevre, who had replaced Richard Cole as Led Zeppelin's tour manager, and John Paul Jones found him dead the next afternoon. Bonham was 32 years old. At the coroner's inquest it emerged that in the 24 hours before he died, Bonham consumed approximately 40 shots, 1 to 1.4 liters, of 40% ABV vodka, after which he vomited and aspirated the vomitus, causing asphyxiation. A verdict of accidental death was returned at the inquest, held on October 27, 1980. An autopsy found no other drugs in Bonham's body. John Bonham's body was cremated and his ashes were interred on October 12, 1980, at Rushock Parish Church, Worcestershire. His headstone reads: Despite media rumors that drummers including Cozy Powell, Phil Collins, Carmine Appice, Barry Emmett Barlow, Roger Taylor, Simon Kirke, or Bev Bevan, among others, would join the group as his replacement. The remaining members decided to disband Led Zeppelin after Bonham's death. They issued a press statement on December 4, 1980, confirming that the band would not continue without their drummer. "We wish it to be known that the loss of our dear friend and the deep respect we have for his family, together with the sense of undivided harmony felt by ourselves and our manager, have led us to decide that we could not continue as we were." It was simply signed Led Zeppelin.
Family.
John Bonham had two siblings. His younger brother, Mick Bonham, 1950–2000, was a disc jockey, author and photographer, and his younger sister, Deborah Bonham, born in 1962, is a singer-songwriter. Bonham was married to Pat Phillips, and the couple had two children. His daughter Zoe Bonham, born June 10, 1975, is a singer-songwriter and also appears regularly at Led Zeppelin conventions and awards, and his son Jason Bonham, born July 15, 1966, a rock drummer who has gained success with various bands including UFO, Foreigner, and Bonham. He previously played in a band called Black Country Communion, which included Glenn Hughes, Derek Sherinian, and Joe Bonamassa. They recorded an album called Black Country in 2010. On December 10, 2007, he played with Led Zeppelin on the Ahmet Ertegun tribute concert, as well as their previous reunion at the Atlantic Records 40th anniversary show on May 15, 1988. A 1970 film clip of a 4-year-old Jason playing drums appears in the Led Zeppelin film The Song Remains the Same. Zoe and Jason appeared at the induction ceremony for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1995 along with the surviving members of Led Zeppelin. John's mother, Joan Bonham, died aged 81 on February 10, 2011. She was one of the lead vocalists for the Zimmers, a 40-member band set up as a result of a BBC documentary on the treatment of the elderly. Bonham's cousin Billy Bonham, born 1950, also played keyboards for Terry Reid and Ace Kepherd.
Legacy. Awards and accolades.
While Bonham is widely considered to be one of the greatest and most influential rock drummers by other musicians and commentators in the industry, he continues to receive the greatest acclaim from fans, and several opinion polls and critic lists continue to list him in first place before any other drummer in rock history. In 2007, Stylus magazine rated Bonham number 1 on its list of the 50 greatest rock drummers, as did the online music magazine JGuys.com in 2008. And a Rolling Stone readers' poll where he led the list by a significant margin in 2011. Bonham was ranked at number 1 on Classic Rock's 2005 list of 50 greatest drummers in rock, and Modern Drummer magazine describes him as the greatest rock and roll drummer in history. In September 2008, Bonham topped the Blabbermouth.net list of rockers fans want brought back to life, ahead of Elvis Presley and Freddie Mercury. Rhythm magazine voted him the greatest drummer ever, topping their readers' poll to determine the 50 greatest drummers of all time for its October 2009 issue. At the end of the BBC Two series I'm in a Rock and Roll Band. On June 5, 2010, John Bonham was named the best drummer of all time. John Bonham has been described by AllMusic as one of the most important, well-known and influential drummers in rock. Adam Budofsky, managing editor of Modern Drummer magazine, writes if the king of rock and roll was Elvis Presley, then the king of rock drumming was certainly John Bonham.
Influence on notable musicians and tributes.
Many rock drummers were influenced by John Bonham's work with Led Zeppelin. A few of them include Alex Van Halen, Joey Kramer, Aerosmith, Lee Kerslake, Uriah Heep, Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Thompson, Chic, Dave Grohl, Nirvana, Foo Fighters, Tommy Lee, Motley Crue, Peter Criss, Kiss, Chad Smith, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Dave Lombardo, Slayer, Phantomas, and Brad Wilk, Rage Against the Machine, Black Sabbath. Several of these drummers have testified to Bonham's influence, such as Roger Taylor of Queen, who stated, Dave Grohl has said. Similarly, Chad Smith has remarked. Charlie Watts of the Rolling Stones told guitar players James Abrecht. Eric Carr, former drummer of Kiss, stated. Musicians other than drummers have also paid tribute to Bonham. John Paul Jones, who formed a very tight musical partnership with him as Led Zeppelin's power rhythm section, stated that Bonham was a bass player's dream. Jimmy Page has also commented. A major tribute for John Bonham entitled Bonzo, The Groove Remains the Same, a night in honor of John Henry Bonham was performed on September 25, 2010, the 30th anniversary of his death. Notable drummers that appeared at the tribute included Steven Adler, Vinny Appice, Kenny Aronoff, Frankie Banali, Frederick Cowery, Jimmy Danda, James Kotak, Chris Slade, Chad Smith, Brian Tiki, Joe Travers, Simon Wright, and John's son, Jason Bonham. Carmine Appice performed via video. Bonham is also admired outside of rock music. In 1988, for example, the Pulitzer laureate Christopher Rouse composed Bonham in tribute to the drummer.
Equipment. Drums.
Bonham initially used Premier drums, but in the late 1960s was introduced to Ludwig drums by Carmine Appice of Vanilla Fudge. Throughout the remainder of his career, Bonham was a major endorser of Ludwig drums. In concert, he used a wide range of different drum kits, but mostly of the same sizes. From 1970 onwards, he used a 26x14 bass drum, which was the most identifiable part of his setup. He used 16x16, 18x16, and, on certain live performances, a 20x18 floor tom, while occasionally changing his tom sizes, which included sizes 14x12, 14x10, and 15x12. Studio and Touring Kit, 1969–1970. Drums, Ludwig in natural maple thermogloss clear finish, 14x12 tom, mounted on snare stand, and later a Rogers mount was added, 16x16 floor tom, 18x16 floor tom, 26x14 bass drum. Bonham did have a second bass drum that can be seen in the Communication Breakdown promo. However, it was never used in any recordings. This double bass drum setup was once lived during a tour with Vanilla Fudge. Also included a 20 inches floor tom which were rarely used due to their size. Studio and Touring Kit, 1970–1973. Drums, Ludwig in green sparkle. 14x10 tom, mounted on a rail consolette mount, 16x16 floor tom, 18x16 floor tom, 26x14 bass drum, 14x6.5 Ludwig Chrome Supraphonic 402 snare, 29 machine timpani, 1972 plus, 29, 32 universal timpani, 1972 plus, Ludwig Speed King bass pedal, 14x10 tom, mounted on a rail consolette mount, 16x16 floor tom, 18x16 floor tom, 26x14 bass drum, 14x6.5 Ludwig Chrome Supraphonic 402 snare, 29 inches machine timpani, 1972 plus, 29 inches, 32 universal timpani, 1972 plus, Ludwig Speed King bass pedal. John was known for telling the band that the green sparkle kit was his favorite and best sounding kit, and it was used on all recordings from 4 onwards, excluding presents where he used the silver sparkle kit. Touring Kit, 1973–1975. Drums, Ludwig Amber Vistalite. 14x10 tom, 16x16 floor tom, 18x16 floor tom, 26x14 bass drum, 14x6.5 Ludwig Chrome Supraphonic 402 snare, 29 machine timpani, 32 universal timpani, Ludwig Speed King bass pedal, 14x10 tom, 16x16 floor tom, 18x16 floor tom, 26x14 bass drum, 14x6.5 Ludwig Chrome Supraphonic 402 snare, 29 inches machine timpani, 32 inches universal timpani, Ludwig Speed King bass pedal. Touring Kit, 1977–1980. Drums, Ludwig stainless steel. 15x12 tom, mounted on a Ludwig No. 781 double tom holder, in 1980, Photos show Bonham went back to a 14x10 rack tom, 16x16 floor tom, 18x16 floor tom, 26x14 bass drum, 14x6.5 Ludwig Chrome Supraphonic 402 snare, 42 strand snare, versus the standard 29 machine timpani, 1972 plus, 32 universal timpani, 1972 plus, Ludwig Speed King bass pedal, 15x12 tom, mounted on a Ludwig No. 781 double tom holder, in 1980. Photos show Bonham went back to a 14x10 rack tom, 16x16 floor tom, 18x16 floor tom, 26x14 bass drum, 14x6.5 Ludwig Chrome Supraphonic 402 snare, 42 strand snare, versus the standard 29 inches machine timpani, 1972 plus, 32 inches universal timpani, 1972 plus, Ludwig Speed King bass pedal.
Cymbals.
Bonham used Paste cymbals exclusively. His cymbal setup included Paste Giant Beat cymbals until 1970. The Paste endorsement agreement shows he experimented with cymbals including the 600 series before changing to a complete set of what is now the 2002 series in '71, which he used for the rest of his career. His Paste Giant Beat series cymbal setup, 1969 to 1970. 15 inches Giant Beat hi-hats, with hi-hat tambourine, 18 inches Giant Beat multi, 20 inches Giant Beat multi, 24 inches Giant Beat ride. His Pace 2002 series cymbal setup, 1970 to 1980. 15 inches 2002 Sound Edge hi-hats, with hi-hat tambourine, 24 inches 2002 ride, 18 inches 2002 medium crash, 20 inches 2002 medium crash, 18 inches 2002 medium crash, occasionally, 38 inches Paste symphonic gong, Ludwig cowbell, made by Paste.
Drum heads.
Bonham played Remo drumheads throughout his career. For his wood drums, he always used Remo-coated Emperors, or Ludwig equivalent, on his batter sides, while using coated Ambassadors on the resonance side of his toms, and a Diplomat or clear Ambassador on the resonance side of his snare drum. The bass drum's front head was always a medium-weight head, for instance a Remo-coated Ambassador. The tom's batter heads were always tuned medium-tight, almost jazz-like, and the resonant head was always tuned way up, for a full, round sound. The bass drum heads were also tuned a lot higher than normal. He never put anything inside his bass drum, although his band members have said that he would sometimes line it with tin foil so that it would project, with the sound reflecting off the foil. He only used a felt strip on the batter side occasionally. On the Vista lights he used Remo CS black dots on the batter side of the toms and the bass drum and clear Ambassadors on the resonant side. The snare always had a coated Emperor on the batter side and an Ambassador or a Diplomat on the snare side. He sometimes used a Gretsch 42-strand snare wires to fatten the snare sound.
Bass drum pedal.
Bonham used Ludwig Speed King pedal, with tight spring tension, throughout his career. His trademark bass drum triplets, played interchangeably with doubles and singles, which are most notable in Good Times Bad Times, were played on a single bass pedal, and not a double bass pedal. Unlike some contemporary drummers, Bonham did not use a double bass drum kit. He did once own one, it was featured in the demo Communication Breakdown, but it was removed from his kit by the rest of the band. John Bonham did play double bass drums while the band was touring with the band Vanilla Fudge. Double bass drums were used on the recording of the drum solo Bonzo's Monterey. It is a unique approach to incorporating a second bass drum. Bonham added a second bass drum and simply played it with his left foot the way he would normally be pedaling January 8 notes on his hi-hat. In sections, this creates two unique bass drum parts that syncopate and sometimes overlap, causing both kick drums to be hit at the same time. It is possible to hear the squeak of the pedal in several recordings, including Since I've Been Loving You, The Ocean, The Rain Song, Over the Hills and Far Away, Dancing Days, The Crunch, Houses of the Holy, 10 Years Gone, Bonzo's Monterey, and the live version of I Can't Quit You Baby on Coda and All My Love on and Through the Outdoor. Jimmy Page later commented.
Tribute kits.
In 2005, Ludwig began issuing Bonham reissue kits in green sparkle maple and amber Vistalite. Ludwig currently offers Zepp kits in their Vistalite and Classic lines, with a 26 bass drum, a 14-tom mounted on a snare stand, and 16 and 18 floor toms. In 2007 they issued a limited edition stainless steel kit similar to the ones Bonham used on the last Led Zeppelin tours in the 1970s. The stainless steel shells were manufactured by Ron Dunnett of Dunnett Classic Drums.